Hey everyone, today we're going to be taking a first look at and going for a first ride on a budget fat bike. This is the State Bike 6061 Trail Plus. State Bike, you've probably heard of them. They're more known for, I'd say, urban bikes and commuting and things like that. But a couple of years ago, and a little bit more than that actually, they have ventured into more of the off-road side of things. So a couple years ago, they released their gravel bike, and honestly, it's a great deal. It's got through axles. It's like super solid build. I've heard really good things about it. I've never personally ridden one, but it looks pretty decent for what it is. So about a month ago, they announced this. This is their fat bike. It comes in either this pinkish color, pinkish purple, they call it Wildberry, or they have more of a gray and black theme, but I think it looks pretty good. Some of the basic specs are it's running a 1x9 drivetrain. It's a Shimano Altus. So it's got a 28 tooth chain ring up front and then an 11 to 42 in the back. So not the lowest gearing out there, but also it is name brand. 2842 is not terrible. However, getting to another spec is these wheels and tires. As you can see right here, these aren't the highest quality wheels out there. I don't know if I'm even going to attempt to set them up tubeless, but just know that at least on the packing slip, the box for the wheels and tires was just as heavy as everything else. This bike weighs in at 41 pounds, and about half that weight is in the wheels and tires, so pretty heavy. These obviously aren't the stock bars. These are some Kona bars that I threw on. Normally I try to ride bikes straight as they came, but it had some very narrow 700 millimeter wide with a tiny bit of rise bars on there and a 70 millimeter stem, and it was just, I was so stretched out I couldn't do it. So I made an exception this time and I threw these bars that I had laying around on here, but that is the only change I've made to the bike. It's also running Tektro mechanical disc brakes with it's the Aries series, and they did set it up good on state with 180 millimeter front and rear. So that gives you some of that extra braking power, and honestly, these mechanical brakes aren't bad. I don't mind mechanical brakes on a bike that I'm primarily going to be using as a fat bike. This bike does have quick release front and rear, so it's a 135 spacing up front with a quick release again, and the rear is 190 QR, which actually isn't that far off. I actually have some DT Swiss wheels that I can swap the end caps out for the rear and fit. And then I guess if I wanted to put a different fork on it on the front, I could technically, swap a nicer wheel set onto it. Otherwise though, you're kind of stuck with those. Some things that I think they did really well on this, again, remember, keep in mind, it's $1,000 for this bike, but it's got 2 bottle cages, which is great. It has rear mounts for a rack right there. There is nothing on the front fork, and the front fork is a straight steer, but it looks like this head tube's oversized, so you could probably swap out everything and run a tapered steerer on it. I haven't confirmed that. I'll look into that more and probably release that in my longer term review. Another thing that makes it look pretty clean and look a little bit better is it has internal routing to the rear for the rear derailleur and the rear brake. Comes out right here at the bottom, right there, right at the bottom bracket, which makes it look good. Doesn't make it the easiest to work on. I am not that tall. I'm 5'11". One thing is this seat post. I have it, you can see on the markings there. I'm almost down to the 0, and shortly after that is the minimum insertion point. So the sizing is a little odd on this. You could always run a longer seat post if you're a taller person, but I would honestly maybe size up from what you're looking at on their charts. If you're close to the taller range of the sizing, maybe go up just to be safe. Geometry wise, it's a little outdated, one might say. It's 71 degree head tube angle, 73 degree seat tube angle. The reach on the large is 431, very short, with a 595 stack. So it's actually fairly tall for how short the reach is, but again, back to that sizing up thing. The chainstays are 460, and then the effective top tube, they don't actually list, but the top tube is around 613, but that's, you know, from there to there, which isn't the most helpful measurement, but yeah, gives you kind of an idea. The geometry is pretty old school. I would expect this to do really well on flatter trails, pavement, the beach, snow, but let's put it to the test. Let's go on this normal loop we do. Again, if you've never seen one of these videos, this is generally the loop I take these bikes on when I'm looking at them. Get some double track climbing, double track descents, some single track, dirt roads, just kind of try to get a mix of everything without getting too crazy. So let's get to it. You definitely feel that rotational weight. It's like, holy cow, it's heavy. This bike is very much a throwback to, I don't know, 10 years ago. Like I said, I swapped these bars out. I think they're 780 wide maybe. Have a little bit more rise. The other ones were so narrow, 700. Even when I rode it around my shop to make sure everything was put together right, I was like, this is not gonna work. The thing about fat bikes is, honestly, yeah, geometry definitely matters, but if you're just looking to get out and have some fun, like, geometry honestly doesn't matter that much. When you're gonna push it, sure. But something about the big tires just makes them incredibly fun. Oh, these brakes need to bed in, and they're mechanical. Like, they're just, the big tires just give you so much confidence. It's hard to just look at it on paper. You can't look at it the same way as other bikes. This doesn't feel as short as it is on paper. I don't know if there's something up with the measurements that they've reported, because on one of the pages it says something about the chainstay being like 730 or something, or 73 centimeters, but still, I don't know. It does definitely feel a little bit longer. Maybe that is the lowish stack, but what's interesting is my Mare has a 466 reach and a 596 stack or something. So 30 millimeters longer, but almost the exact same stack. And I don't know, it doesn't feel a whole lot longer than this at all. I mean, when I stand up, I get it. It's pretty close. The effective top tube must be pretty long, but it just doesn't feel, I don't feel that cramped. The only reason I would probably size up for me, like I said, is just that seat post. Okay, almost to the top. It's definitely taking me a little longer than usual. The gearing I'm feeling it. Although I'll say, again, going back to my Mare, it's an 11 speed, but my lowest gear on that is 2846. So we're only 4 teeth off. That does make a big difference. Yes, I understand that, but it's not like I have a 52 tooth on there. And if you had different tires on here, holy cow, that'd make a huge difference. Different wheels and tires, I should say. Tires aren't that bad. I don't think I've ever ridden Juggernauts, but they're not horrible. One thing I didn't even think about is these are some wide wheels. I can't see exactly, or can't tell. They don't mention the width, but I think these might be 100 millimeter wide rims, because this is a 4.5 inch, 26 by 4.5, and it's pretty stretched out. So yeah, these might be some very wide rims. This is the largest size tire you can run on these, at least that's recommended. They're pretty spot on. I don't think you'd be able to go a whole lot wider. There's a little bit of room in the rear, but not that much, especially once you factor in snow. I don't know that I'd feel super comfortable on a 4.8. Typically though, 100 millimeter rims, I like more with like a 5 inch tire, a 4.8. You know, that's like, I want the deepest snow possible and maximum flotation. Oh, you kind of get her airborne. Yep. Got to get used to two-finger braking, but they work decently well. Oh. I did that on, I think the Jones bike. Maybe it was the Panorama. Oh, it was up here. I got way more. Yeah, this isn't... Playful's not a word I would use for this bike. This is like a, let's go for a leisurely ride, go explore, but tires on the ground type of bike. Let's get into some rocky stuff, see how it does. Yeah, definitely gotta slow down a little. I saw this the other day. Oh, yeah. Oh. You know, that's, again, what I said with the fat bike. It just makes me want to explore a little bit, try different lines. Even if the geometry isn't that modern or aggressive or whatever, like, you just roll over whatever you want. Every once in a while, I'm catching my heel on the rear chainstay. I do tend to turn my heel inward for some reason. Maybe I need to tighten up my clips so it's not so like letting my ball of my foot twist so much. But these are a little wider back there. It flares out fairly quickly. This derailleur does not have a clutch, so keep that in mind. When it gets really bumpy, you might hear it clicking. You might have problems with the chain drop if the narrow wide chain ring isn't holding it well enough. I almost think a better choice on that could have been like the Box 2, you know, like what I've got on Jones LWB, or even the Micro Shift. Pretty sure those have a clutch. The clutch just holds tension on the chain so that it can't jump off, basically. It also makes it quieter, which is kind of a side effect and a good thing, but yeah. See, this right here, I feel like this is super fun on this bike. These smoother rolling trails, occasionally something rocky. It's fun. It does great. Now let's head on to the opposite. Put the power down. Man, I keep switching back to one finger on the brakes, and it really does need two. Makes a big difference. Whew. It maintains its momentum really well from those heavy tires. They want to keep on rolling, but as soon as they slow down, your legs better be ready. I've said this before, but I had a friend that I would ride with frequently, and he always said, ride fat to get fit, because you ride these big old bikes and they are really pushing your skills and your lungs, your muscles. Whew. Feel a little forward on the bike, that shorter reach. That's what I can feel. So I feel a little bit like I'm riding a 90s mountain bike. All right, that was it. All right, I'm back in my shop. So overall, got a cat that wants some attention. Overall, this bike was kind of what I expected. $1,000 kind of sounds like a lot, but there's not a whole lot of options out there when it comes to fat bikes. So there's actually a lot of brands have stopped making fat bikes. Some of the bigger brands, Specialized, for example, they've exited. There was one brand that was did a really good job on the budget side of things. That was Framed, but they've recently gone under, so they're not an option anymore. So good on State for seeing this chance to enter the market. Oh my goodness. They have had fat bikes before. This will give people a chance to try it out at a much lower price point. I don't know what the deal is with this cat. The geometry is obviously super conservative. It didn't feel as conservative as I expected it to feel. It was a little more confident than I thought it would be. It's definitely not playful. Don't expect to have something you're gonna be able to have a whole lot of maneuverability from, but yeah, it wasn't as bad as I thought. The main weakness that I see in this is the wheel set. And part of the problem there is that since it's QR, front and rear, and especially since the front is a 135, you're gonna have a hard time finding something to, a wheel set now to replace it with, to upgrade. And that's a big thing to look for on bikes. So that's one thing or the main thing I would say that is the biggest weakness with the bike. The fact that it's an outdated standard, wheel standard. Because yes, it also is square taper, but it's still 100 millimeter threaded. So you could upgrade that. It can accept a different fork, which, you know, right now, maybe I'll mess with that because that does open the options of you could switch this out to a modern standard. And then the rear 190 is not that bad, 190 QR. Obviously a through axle would be better. It's not like the back is also a 135. It's not like a Sterling Pugsley or something like that where it's this odd offset standard or something. We don't have any snow in the forecast. I don't know what is going on this time of year, but we should have some snow to ride on. Hopefully I get some soon, because I think that's where this is probably gonna do the best. Today I felt like it did the best in some of the smoother, not as steep climbs and not as steep descents, and it was more rolling and that type of terrain, and that's what most people are fat biking on anyway. That's all I've got for you. Grateful to State for sending this bike out so I could give it a test. I always appreciate, you know, seeing reviews on bikes on all ends of the price spectrum, because as great as some of these bikes are, not everyone can afford a $4,000, $5,000 bike, or even a $2,000 bike for that matter. So grateful for them for sending this out and for making it so that it's actually an option. I know there are other bikes in a close price range, maybe a little more, but again, if you say sub 1,000, there aren't a whole lot of options out there. So I'm gonna keep giving this some test rides and we'll see how it does. So if you wanna see that, be sure to subscribe and you can catch that video. I also have some other reviews in the works right now. The Panorama Torngat Tie. That's a titanium fat bike that also is able to transform into a mountain bike. Also the Jones LWB, which right now I do have a fat tire on. You can catch it back here. I have one on the front, a 27.5 by 4.3. I'm gonna go try that out. I always like to test these bikes in a whole bunch of different configurations if possible and on different terrain. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.